Most people never ask the right question. Instead, they ask why they haven't arrived yet. They wonder why the life they can almost sense at the edge of their awareness hasn't fully materialized. They can picture the version of themselves they believe is possible. They can imagine the quality of life they know exists somewhere ahead of them. Yet something continues to hold the distance between where they currently stand and where they feel they are meant to be. This gap becomes confusing. It creates a quiet tension in the mind. People begin to search for explanations, and the answers they usually receive are predictable. They are told to do more, to push harder, to want success more intensely. The assumption is always the same, that the missing ingredient must be effort. If only someone worked longer, sacrificed more, or increases the intensity of their desire, eventually the life they imagined would appear. But this explanation often misses something important. There is a different question that rarely gets asked, and it is far more precise. Not why haven't I arrived, but what kind of person actually arrives. Because true arrival is not simply about external success or material acquisition. It is not just about reaching a destination others can recognize. The deeper form of arrival is becoming someone whose outer life is aligned with their inner structure. It is the process of developing into the kind of person who can sustain the life they once only imagined. Seen from this perspective, arrival is not a random reward given to those who waited the longest or worked the hardest. Instead, it is the natural result of a specific internal process, a gradual development that shapes how a person thinks, responds, and chooses. Most people encounter the beginning of this process at some point in their lives. They feel the pull toward something greater. They sense the possibility of a different version of themselves. But many stop at the beginning. The process asks for more than inspiration. It asks for consistency, reflection, and honesty with oneself. This is where the distinction begins to appear. Many people feel the call. They experience that inner signal that something more is possible for them. The awareness arrives quietly, sometimes as curiosity, sometimes as dissatisfaction, and sometimes as a persistent feeling that their current life does not fully reflect who they truly are. But being chosen is something different. It is not a title given by anyone else. It is not a special label placed on a person from the outside. Being chosen is the result of repeated decisions made internally. It emerges slowly through the accumulation of choices made in private moments, moments when no one is watching, when there is no applause, and when the outcome remains uncertain. The call itself is not rare. Almost everyone experiences it at some point in life. It may appear as a sense of displacement, the feeling of being in the right place on paper, but the wrong place internally. It may appear as a persistent awareness that something about the way you're living does not match the way you are built. Psychologists studying meaning and self-actualization describe this experience as the gap between the actual self and the ideal self. This gap is not a flaw. It is often the engine of growth. But many people experience this gap as suffering instead of invitation. They interpret it as proof that something is wrong with them or wrong with their life. Instead of exploring the call, they avoid it. They distract themselves. They rationalize it. They construct explanations for why the life they sense is not actually possible. In doing so, they choose comfort over confrontation. And the call grows quieter over time, but it rarely disappears. The difference between those who carry the call and those who move through it is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not circumstance. The difference is the willingness to turn toward the discomfort of the gap rather than away from it. It is the capacity to remain present with the unknown territory of genuine change, without immediately trying to escape back into something familiar. Individuals who transform through adversity treat difficulty as information rather than as a verdict. When something painful appears in their life, they ask what the experience might be revealing, rather than simply seeking to eliminate the discomfort. When relationships expose uncomfortable truths about themselves, they examine those truths rather than immediately rejecting them. When the gap between who they are and who they could become begins to feel overwhelming, they develop the ability to stay with that awareness instead of closing it prematurely. This process is not easy. It requires repeated moments where comfort is available, but honesty demands something different. Over time, something begins to change internally. The brain is constantly shaped by experience and by how we relate to those experiences. Two people can pass through similar events and emerge completely different depending on how they engaged with what happened. Someone who allows experiences to be felt, processed, and integrated gradually develops a different internal structure. Their ability to remain calm in uncertainty expands. Their capacity to respond intentionally rather than react automatically increases. They become capable of holding complexity without collapsing under it. This is what the chosen path actually builds, not a life without difficulty, but a different relationship to difficulty. Pain becomes information rather than something that must immediately be escaped. Growth emerges, not because suffering exists, but because someone chooses to engage honestly with it. The challenges people encounter often come through systems and patterns that have existed long before they were aware of them. Family expectations, cultural conditioning, early attachment patterns, and social environments all create subtle rules about who someone is allowed to be. These systems are powerful, not because they are obvious, but because they feel normal. Breaking those patterns requires awareness. Each time someone recognizes a limiting pattern and chooses to move beyond it, they interrupt something that has been repeating for years. That interruption often carries a cost. It may produce guilt, fear, resistance from others, or internal uncertainty. But every time someone chooses clarity over comfort, they begin building a different internal architecture. Over time, adversity can be transformed into something constructive. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that people who remain engaged with the question of meaning are more likely to emerge from difficulty with expanded emotional and cognitive capacity. They do not simply recover, they integrate forward. They take what happened and allow it to reorganize their understanding of themselves and the world. Pain becomes part of the structure rather than something that must be erased. The experiences that once seemed purely destructive become material for something stronger and more complex. But being chosen is not a permanent state. It is an ongoing process. The internal changes someone builds through honesty, reflection, and courage remain available to them. But the practice that created those changes must continue. Self-awareness is not a destination. It is a discipline. People who have experienced significant growth can still drift back into comfortable patterns if they stop examining themselves honestly. The most subtle form of regression rarely appears as a dramatic collapse. More often, It arrives quietly, disguised as comfort. Life stabilizes. The hardest battles seem to be behind you, and the urgency that once pushed you toward growth begins to fade. On the surface, everything appears fine, but underneath that calm, something important may begin to slow down. Instead of continuing the search inward, people sometimes settle into the improved version of themselves they have already built. The questions that once challenged them, questions about purpose, patterns, and personal truth, stop being asked. After all, the earlier problems were solved. The growth was real. The transformation happened. It feels reasonable to believe that the work is finished. But development rarely works that way. Growth is not a single event. It is an ongoing process. When the deeper questions disappear, something else quietly fades with them. Awareness. Without awareness, even positive progress can slowly turn into a new kind of comfort zone. The call that once felt strong and urgent becomes softer, almost like a background signal that is easy to ignore. This is where the real difference begins to appear. Those who continue the path do not stop engaging with themselves simply because life becomes easier. In fact, they remain just as curious about their own patterns during calm seasons as they were during difficult ones. They keep exploring the edges of their understanding. They keep noticing where their reactions come from, what motivates their choices, and whether their daily behavior still reflects the values they claim to hold. Because the life someone builds through this process is not something that suddenly arrives in the future. It is constructed quietly through everyday decisions. It appears in how someone responds to small frustrations, not just major crises. It appears in whether they choose honesty over convenience when no one else is watching. It appears in the willingness to examine their own behavior with clarity, rather than automatically defending it. In the end, the difference between those who are called and those who are chosen is not talent, luck, or worthiness. It is practice. The consistent practice of awareness, honesty, and growth, long after the initial transformation has already taken place. The call itself was never rare. What is rare is the willingness to continue answering the call. Many people feel the pull toward something deeper at some point in their lives. They sense the possibility of a more aligned version of themselves. But sensing it and responding to it are two very different things. The rare part is the decision to keep showing up for the process, even when progress feels slow and the outcome is uncertain. It is the willingness to continue walking the path when there is no applause, no immediate reward, and no clear confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. It means choosing truth over comfort, choosing honesty with yourself even when the easier option would be to look away. Being chosen is not a title someone receives. It is not a reward granted from outside. It is a quiet commitment. A commitment to keep building a life that reflects who you truly are, one choice at a time, day after day.